I apologise in advance if regular viewers tuned in expecting a funnier, sharper edition of Gauge the Issue with random visual gags instead of words on a high contrast background, but this subject keeps changing as more adds to it, and I think it's worth giving it some publicity before there's any risk of it being forgotten about. Chances are this is going to make for some very unpleasant reading, but issues like this can escalate if they go unaddressed. Also, given the potential severity of this matter, casual jokes might not be appropriate right now. On May 8, 2019, Linton and Barnstaple Railway trainee guard Alistair Burgess called said railway out on concerns suggesting discrimination and breaches in health and safety. Please excuse any spelling or grammar errors. An example of discrimination I suffered at the hands of Martin Budd, the L&BR's general manager. It's no secret that I'm disabled. I have dyspraxia. This does not, however, stop me from being able to carry out safety-critical tasks such as guarding and signalling. After 2 years of guard training, I repeatedly asked Martin Budd how I was doing and if I was going to be passed out. His response was unsurely, I'm not sure if it's safe with your problems, or he would try to avoid answering it, bearing in mind I was told by several others that I was one of the best guards and should have been passed out a long time ago. I was only allowed to carry out guarding turns solo when there was a shortage of guards. I later found out that Martin Budd had never filled out any competency paperwork, meaning if there was an incident while I was on duty, there was no evidence I was qualified to carry out my rostered duty. Discrimination is a crime under the Equalities Act 2010. There's more to the post than I feel comfortable quoting at this stage, as it concerns accusations of the L&B allegedly backdating track inspection paperwork, leading to Alistair Burgess being worked under duress to the point of admission to A&E. I'll leave a link in the description to anybody who wishes to read the whole thing. The upshot is, Alistair says while being rostered as a guard on solo turns when nobody else was available, he was refused the opportunity of being passed out as a guard due to reasons he was born with. Dyspraxia can indeed prevent things like balance, eye-hand coordination, grasp of objects, controlled movement, speech, control of stress, and following instructions amongst other concerns, actions which are vital in a safety-critical role should an accident occur. However, given that Alistair alleged to being relied upon to cover terms of past guards who were unavailable, in some cases alleged being made to feel guilty for not being available, emphasis being on alleged at this point, it seems unlikely that the railway didn't think he was actually good enough to do the job in the first place. It does, however, bring into question who remains liable in the event of an incident when the only guard on duty is still a trainee as far as the legally binding paperwork is concerned. I will own up and say that I, somewhat naively, immediately took sides with Alistair Burgess on this matter as it reminded me of similar issues I've witnessed in the past. However, having taken the time to ask around various operations representatives in railway circles, I've grown the wiser to not personally point fingers at this stage, but to try and see the situation from both perspectives. I apologise if I come across as biased towards one or the other, but I stand by what I state in the disclaimer of this editorial. Now, this isn't the first time in railway preservation that such accusations against a heritage line have come up, but the fact that this particular case has come up at this particular time and on this particular platform does voice potential concern. The Office of Road and Rail has been coming down hard on the heritage railway scene this year, with the West Somerset Railway having had to close for 4 months due to numerous anomalies to sort out, and the pressure on the Great Central to do away with line-side passes in a bid to reduce trespass and irresponsible behaviour on the track, not least because as soon as it goes out on social media, it's immediately accessible around the world. So something like this accusation against the L&B, along with countless trespass reports on the national network when Flying Scotsman ran her stint on the Great Britain 12 rail tour, causing severe delays and the potential banning of the loco from the national network in the future, may bring the heritage scene under further question if nothing's going to be done about it. The original post, since removed by the Linton and Barnstaple from their social media circles, to be fair, the use of swear words and potentially liable accusations in other paragraphs may have implied an aggressive and harmful tone towards L&B representatives, has gone viral and seems to be gaining momentum with other preservationists of the social media generation. Partly because of the concerns over breaching Equality and Health and Safety Acts, but also because of similar experiences of other young Heritage Railway volunteers who faced genuine forms of discrimination and bullying over issues including gender, sexual orientation, disability, mental health, autism, BPD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia. Heritage Railways need dedicated volunteers, but at the end of the day, only so many people are going to come forward, those people can only spare so much time in a year, and smaller organisations can't afford to pick and choose who does come forward. Everybody may seek the next Fred Dibner 24/7, but chances are the best they're going to get these days is a generation of internet gamers who just so happen to have a passing interest in railways. There are times when you just have to make do with who you can get, focus on their strengths and work with them. If the boot doesn't fit, sometimes you just have to make it fit. Volunteers don't always fall under the same legal protection as paid staff, but maybe that's where something could be amiss. Acceptance into a big organisation such as a Major League Heritage Line can be tough when your skin isn't very thick, But when there's only so many people free and willing to give up their spare time and get their hands dirty at all hours in all weathers, the higher-ups in any organisation have to understand that there's only so much they can legally and morally get away with. Considering the L&B have deleted all evidence of Alistair Burgess's concerns from their public outlets without addressing why these statements have been made, it could imply a guilty conscience to some onlookers who have accused the railway of trying to maintain a squeaky clean reputation, regardless of whether such accusations of law-breaking and discrimination turn out to be genuine or liable. I say all this without personal prejudice against the Linton and Barnstaple Railway. In the realm of heritage railways, it's still a relatively young and small operation with big ambitions and great support for the recreation of a much-loved, long-lost line that holds a special place in the hearts of millions around the world. It may well be that the railway was acting in the interests of appeasing the Railway Inspectorate regarding operational roles. So at this point, when they've yet to make a statement themselves, it's not exactly fair to point the finger at them and find them guilty. I apologise if I did that myself, for the record. Worryingly, there may have been implication that the ORR could well enforce more stringent medical checks for operational roles at heritage lines than there currently is. Bear in mind, the ORR is a government organisation, and we all know how little empathy such organisations tend to have. It could well be that the ORR might tighten the belt for those with disabilities and learning difficulties who want to join heritage railways and subsequently force all railways to block out such people upon first impression. Given the number of people with autism and Asperger's that railways tend to attract, I personally believe such tightening could be a mistake for all concerned. If two people applied for an operational role at a railway, one with physical or learning difficulties and one without, the railway is in no legal position to automatically select the one who doesn't have an inconvenience for training. That's discrimination, and it may well be that the one with the inconvenience proves more competent than the one without. In the context of operational and safety critical roles, the definition of competent is important to get right, as it concerns whether or not someone is able to carry out safety critical duties without any medical issues preventing them from doing so and causing any incidents. No two cases are the same. If someone proves competent at their role regardless of any physical or mental inconveniences, then such inconveniences shouldn't become a problem, as sometimes it can enhance their individual abilities, talents and levels of commitment. Let's say somebody comes forward wanting to become a driver, but is colour deficient and can't see red. That person might well be able to physically work their way through the stages, i.e. stand, clean an engine, shovel coal, control a train and safely stop it in the event of an emergency, but if they can't see a signal at danger, then it's an instant fail on their medical exam. On the other hand, this is where case-by-case assessment, as practiced by some of the big league heritage railways, can filter out the wheat from the chaff. The correct level of colourblindness can actually get you through the visual test and thus allow you to become a driver. Therefore, such a hindrance shouldn't be a problem. That said, selection can work both ways. If somebody with dyslexia came forward wanting to become a driver, again, they may be able to work their way through the physical stages, but if they can't fill out a report following an accident, then it can legally work against them and they may find themselves being recommended on the roster of station staff. But then, of course, dyslexia affects some people more than others. Again, case-by-case assessment can help resolve this. But then, of course, setting the rules isn't up to me, Alistair Burgess, or the Linton and Barnstaple. Let's just hope escalation of such legislation doesn't extend to blocking out everybody with any form of disability. It wasn't too long ago that many of the aforementioned afflictions weren't official forms of affliction, and the practice for those with known symptoms was to institutionalise them away from society. And believe me, there are some backward-minded people in railway circles who still think they should be institutionalised. Imagine if that sort of person worked for the ORR. Every individual and organisation can make mistakes, and for the purposes of PR, safety and morality, it's important that such mistakes are addressed and acknowledged for the benefit of the movement. Better to be the big man, apologise and take steps to prevent repetition than to cowardly sweep it under the rug unnoticed like nothing ever happened, not least because it's already discouraging other young people from coming forward into the hobby, regardless of whether or not they're physically or mentally affected. Speaking as a former fitter on 2 big league heritage railways and a past guard and trainee fireman on a small league one, I've witnessed my share of discrimination and acceptance in the movement and can tell who had the right idea when it came to encouragement and social acceptance without compromising health and safety. Banter is one thing, but ethical and social blocking on first impression is another. What happens next for the L&B, Alistair Burgess and railway preservation in general on this matter remains to be seen, but reports to the ORR have been discussed and may end up being pursued. Part of me thinks this whole thing may be forgotten about in a few weeks' time, but another part of me hopes that it doesn't, and most of me wishes that a positive resolution for both parties can emerge from this scenario. I guess we'll just have to wait and see where this line goes, but with hindsight, the tracks could have been laid out more professionally, so it could have been directed immediately towards the ORR instead of taking it up on social media first. I make no apologies for possibly coming across as preaching to the converted in summary, because it's not the first time that such an issue has come up, and it won't be the last. Politics are a thing in railway circles, safety should be a thing in railway circles, but discrimination really shouldn't be a thing. And yes, there are clear-cut differences between all three. If you're a volunteer with a mental or physical inconvenience who's prevented from doing what you want to do despite you proving fully competent at it, don't let discrimination slide. Call it out and act upon it before it's too late, but at least be careful how you go about it. Best to think and talk about whether or not you're actually being discriminated against, or whether your inconveniences will indeed get in the way of you doing your duties in the long run. And to the management of heritage railways everywhere, if someone comes forward wanting to work for you and said person has an inconvenience of some description, please take your time to learn about it and how to best use it to your advantage. Please don't block it out while you legally can't. I'm Chris, and I'm here to cautiously gauge the issue.